Hello, welcome to my channel and thank you for being here. Today I'll discuss three images and I will be continuing on the theme of euphemistically called resettlements, forced removals of people in South Africa that this country endured in the 60s, 70s, and 80s as the apartheid state tried to impose its dystopian planning on the people, moving more than 3 million people to fulfill the spatial directives of white people owning most of the land and removing black people from land that had been historically theirs and now needed to be fit this new vision of homelands and traditional, so-called traditional black areas. The first image that you've seen, the title is Mokgopa residents win their right to return to their ancestral lands, which were devastated after they were forcibly removed. Northwest Province, 1989. Mokgopa was quite one of the more well-known of such places that were subjected to forced removals. They resisted for many years quite successfully, and we had hoped that they would successfully win their right to remain on their land, but finally they were subjected to forced removals. And I, with an intrepid band of Transvaal Rural Action Action Committee people, witnessed that removal. We walked onto the land at night because it was occupied already by the state and their machinery to remove people. And we climbed the highest hill to observe, hoping to be able to somehow, record this removal, but were discovered at first light because it being a high post, the security sent a detachment up there to observe themselves from that high point and discovered us hiding up on the top. So I have a few very blurry images done from a long distance with not the greatest long lens of that removal, and a few images of us being processed as we were being charged for illegal entry into onto that area. But yes, we had photographed the community a bit before the removal, and there are other photographers like Paul Weinberg that did a lot more than I did. I was a kind of a newcomer to this whole story of forced removals, but certainly on their return, I think this image kind of captures that. I didn't do a huge amount of successful images of Mokgopa, but this one captures, the determination and the wariness of people, the duration of that resistance is etched in this man's face, of the uncertainty of being removed from your ancestral lands and then finally being subjected to that. And finally returning to the ruins of what was once an as idyllic as it could be under a, you know, um settled and colonized country, subjected now to apartheid even. So you see in the background, and somewhat blurred, the rubble and the ruins of their destroyed homes. And these people did finally um, restore their community. It's not that easy to restore a community with limited resources, um, when the community should never have been destroyed in the first place. So the second image looks at a place that I was a lot more and had a much longer relationship with. The image you see now, the title reads Headman Baba Naledi, who's second from the right, the white-haired man. I'm now white-haired like he is, in a meeting over impending forced removals from ancestral land. Banganik, Cozy Bay, Ingwavuma, KwaZulu-Natal, 1986. And this is a community meeting, Khotla, where the community are discussing this impending removal as well as other community issues. And it has several aspects to it. The towards the left, you see these reeds, and also the pine frond palm branches that from the very famous raffia palm forests that adjoin this community, are part of this community, and that they use to build. So that hut that you see in the background would have been built with that material. So the building material stacked under the tree. And Baba Naledi was. I have another amazing images of him addressing the KwaZulu environmental authorities, and stating the community's case for them to remain in their community. And I'm happy to say that in this instance, the community won its right, endured in that fight, didn't win its right, but fought to remain and remained in that very beautiful. Those of you who know the Cozy Bay area, I have a long-standing love for that place, that I was introduced to to Baba Naledi by David Webster, the anthropologist who worked in that community. So the last image I'm going to show, the third one. The caption reads, a homeland site awaiting resettled tenant farm workers. Kutdeni, KwaZulu-Natal, 1987. There were hundreds of such places, and as with resources permitting, we couldn't. It was very difficult to photograph any one person to photograph all of them. But so this is one other such place. I went on an epic motorcycle trip through the KwaZulu-Natal interior hinterland, Zululand back then, and visited such then seemingly backwater places that didn't get easily covered by the media, or by the mass media of the time, or even by the independent media as such. And again, this image of this quite distinguished gentleman here, retired obviously, if ever he worked, who was, I came across sitting in this landscape, with the infamous toilets that would first be erected before Fletcraft, the notorious Fletcraft at the time, a sort of a modernized zinc structure, would be erected for and then occupied by tenant farmers, being removed off farms in the adjoining areas and settled in these communities. We should be going back to these communities to see how they're faring, how they are how have they managed to establish themselves in these sometimes very remote areas. This is, close to Nkandla. These are barren backwaters, far from employment opportunities, and the people in these communities are subjected to um, unemployment being a huge, huge issue, and a lack of development that would enable them to be able, because that's what should be happening. People should be enabled to live where they choose to, and not, as I used to erroneously believe, be forced to move to cities for sustenance. Because the cities, you know, in as much as they are important and they play a role and they can employ huge numbers of people, we can't have everyone living in cities. We are especially an agrarian people by nature still, and and as AI and robotics and all these things come to bear, we need people living on the land producing food, for instance, and living more sustainable lives in on the land. And so this resettlement, in a way, does kind of fit into that, of creating spaces for people to live, albeit that they were ejected from um, a more viable farmland. Because usually this place, these rocks will testify in this image that uh, these kind of places where people were resettled were the more hostile places and less suitable for agriculture, So I mean, I think this old man was herding his cattle or some livestock there, and but you can see the landscape is quite quite bleak and somewhat barren. So there's a degree to which and one has to approach agricultural enterprise in these kind of areas with quite a lot of precision and in consultation with the people and support them to to create the kind of lifestyles that they would um, preferably want to have. So I'll end it there and say thank you for watching. And more information on myself and my work can be found on my website, a link to which, including my blog and email address, can be found in the video description below. If you like this talk, remember to click the like button and press subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Thank you.